Hello everybody, a very warm welcome back to MedTalks. Now this episode is a very special episode, and the reason for that is because we have finally got a guest on our podcast. Now this is something that has been in the works for a while now. We've been trying to get guests on for a good amount of time, and it's finally happened. It's a very exciting episode. It's a fascinating listen, and it's actually with a very dear friend of mine who I went to university with, medical school with. I really do admire the work he has done so far and all of the projects he's currently working on at the moment, alongside working in London as a junior doctor. He really does inspire me, and that's why essentially I wanted him to get him on the podcast so you could all learn about his story and about his achievements so far and the different things that he's got himself involved in. There's a lot of variation. He has a lot of different interests and passions, and I wanted him to share them with us, with you all, so hopefully you can be inspired just like I have been. I do hope you enjoyed this episode. As I said, it is the first episode with a guest, and we do have lots more coming up, so do stay tuned for those ones. Please let us know what you think. So as always, you can feel free to message us on Instagram or Facebook. Just send us a DM, or alternatively, you can email us, and it's hellomedtalks@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts. Let us know if you want us to ask any questions to our future guests. We would love to hear from you. But for now, all I can say is, without further ado, enjoy the episode, sit back, relax, and let us know what you think. All right, enjoy it. Bye-bye. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to MedTalks. Today's episode is a very special one because we have an incredible guest here to talk to us and to tell us all about their incredible life story so far. Dr. Priyesh Patel, humanitarian aid worker, doctor, athlete, NHS clinical entrepreneur, Shiva Radhakrishna. That's from his Instagram bio. A man of many interests and talents for sure. Dr. Priyesh is working as a medical doctor in London, which is his hometown. He obtained his medical degree at Barts in the London School of Medicine in the busy and diverse streets of East London. Prior to this, he completed a Bachelor of Science degree in Biomedical Sciences and also a Master's in Global Health and Development at the University College of London. Dr. Priyesh developed a keen interest in exploring the illegal practices of FGM, also known as female genital mutilation, and I'm sure we'll hear a lot more about that later on. He's presented at numerous healthcare conferences on this issue. Alongside this, Dr. Priyesh has travelled around Europe as a humanitarian aid worker, providing healthcare to refugees, mainly in Greece. Outside of medicine, he loves fitness, particularly boxing and track athletics. He's also very religious and spiritual. Dr. Priyesh, we are delighted to have you here on the podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're looking forward to having a great conversation.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it. Thanks for the intro as well. You summarized my entire life.
Did you enjoy it? Was it a good intro?
Yeah, it really was. Sometimes I think when you're so involved in one thing, I forget what I've done in the past. So it's nice to be reminded of things that I've spent years working on.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's all very impressive. And we've got a lot that we can talk about today, a lot to get into. First thing first, I just kind of want to travel back to your younger days. I believe you grew up in North London. Is that right?
Yeah, Camden.
Camden. Oh, okay. So
Northwest
just tell us. Sorry, what was that?
Northwest 1 was the postcode.
Oh, not NW1. Right. Okay. So just tell us a bit about your childhood and your upbringing as a whole. How was it?
It was not very straightforward, I would say. I grew up on top of a laundrette, it's a business.
Right. Okay.
So my parents were hardworking business owners, and they would often be very busy trying to secure an income for the family. I had two older sisters, and obviously back in the days, a lot of the things that we have available to us now, like iPads and phones and all this technology, wasn't available. So we sort of had to just preoccupy ourselves at times. It was a bit of a rough area that we lived in. There were a lot of stabbings nearby. Every night I'd hear ambulances driving past my house. It was a high street, so I got used to being able to sleep with a lot of noise. And that was about 15 years of my life, really, just sort of living in a very, very busy, congested high street,
Mm.
watching my parents work very hard and trying to work my way, navigate through school
Mm.
without really thinking too much about where I'm going or what I'm going to achieve. Even in my teens, I wasn't really sure.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in every now and then, you'd go through obstacles, whether they were family issues or whether they were issues at school, that sort of shaped me into the person I am. And overall, though, I think that I came out of that area and the schools I were in a good state, ready to start university and give it my all. And
Mm.
so I did that when I was 18. Still not sure of what I wanted to achieve or what I wanted to do, but put my heart into the degree program that I was on, made a lot of friends, and started to slowly appreciate what I was learning and what I was doing at the time. And slowly, I think I developed the personality traits I have now and the interests I have now. But
Mm.
it took a lot of obstacles along the way. It's a brief summary.
No, that's great. And you said that for a long time you didn't know what you wanted to do. That must have been quite difficult. And I'm sure a lot of people can, listening to this, may be able to relate. A lot of uncertainty, a lot of doubt. How did you manage through that time?
Yeah. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I had an interest in biology and I had an interest in animals. Like I love animals.
Okay.
I respect them, appreciate them. And then I did the subject at GCSE A levels that I was best at, apart from art, because I was very creative, was biology. And so I just knew that I knew what I needed to study next, and that was something to do with biology or animals. And I was surrounded by people who knew what they wanted to do,
Mm.
like people who were very driven, very focused.
Yeah.
They wanted to become doctors, or they wanted to go and study this, or they wanted to go to Oxbridge. Whereas I didn't have a specific target in mind. I was just following my interests.
Mm.
Um, so I actually enrolled onto zoology when I was 18
Oh,
because
really?
I applied for both biomedical sciences and zoology. I got offers for both. I enrolled onto zoology because I thought, I guess what I should have been was a vet, but I started studying zoology. I did a week and thought I need to switch.
Oh, okay.
So I switched to biomedical sciences,
Yeah.
just because I thought that it would actually lead me towards a career I wanted. And I still didn't know what career I wanted.
Yeah.
And even when I was studying biomedical sciences, I was still surrounded by people who were very driven, very focused. Like I said earlier, they wanted to become doctors, or they wanted to go work in big pharma, or they wanted to go work with banks. And I was still very, very unsure.
Yeah.
And to be honest, I didn't, um, I didn't have a care about what other people were doing. I was just getting on with things, and I think, getting on with the degree I was doing and having a good time with my friends. And I think I think for some reason I didn't compare myself to those people because I didn't want to. I didn't want to just do what other people are doing
Mm.
just because they knew what they wanted to do.
Mm.
Um, and then somehow I ended up deciding what I wanted to do slowly. It took a lot of time, and then ended up studying medicine and becoming a doctor.
Mm. No, I think you're probably the first person I've ever met that I know that's actually even started studying zoology. I don't think I've ever met anyone else who's done it. So you did it for a week and then changed your mind. What made you change your
Yeah.
mind?
Actually, 2 weeks, because one of those weeks was Fresher Week. So
Oh, okay, fine. That doesn't really count then, does it?
but that doesn't really count. Uh, it was honestly the I started at that point to think about what career options I would have. And that's what led me to change my mind, because a degree in zoology would more often would often lead you into a role in science and research. It's not the same as veterinary medicine in that you would become a veterinarian. There isn't a particular degree career that's associated with zoology. With biomedical sciences, you can become a biomedical scientist. With zoology, you couldn't. And then I realized I wasn't as interested in research as much as I was in, biology, factual biology.
Yeah.
I wasn't as interested in pursuing or looking into potential new treatments for animals. I was
Yeah.
more interested, for example, in learning about how animals work.
Sure.
So
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
guess it's the difference between biology and biomedical sciences. And then I switched, and I never looked back.
And how was that obviously, you made the decision quite early on within the first couple of weeks. Was it difficult to actually get out of that program and then start biomedical sciences? How did, because a lot of people listening to this may have gone through similar experiences or may want to know how easy it is to change degrees, those sorts of things. How did you actually go about doing it, and was it quite straightforward for you?
I don't actually think it's that easy, but it was straightforward for most people. But it was straightforward for me because I actually held an offer for both biomedical sciences and zoology at UCL, and so therefore it was easy to switch over.
Right. Okay.
Biomedical sciences is a heavily subscribed for degree program. Like so many universities across the country have that degree programs. There's so many people who are interested in biology and the sciences and want to pursue a career in medicine.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of programs for biomedical sciences around the country. So it wasn't a difficult switch for me, but I do know that for a lot of people it can be. And I really feel for them because for me, I was just lucky, I think.
Sure. And so when you went into biomed, did you know at that point you wanted to pursue medicine, or were you just essentially keeping your options open?
I still didn't know what I wanted to do. Again, I was just narrowing down my options,
Yeah.
and still following my interests. Like I said, I was surrounded by people who wanted to then study medicine after their biomedical science degree. So whilst I was in the first year and the second year, they were applying for medicine, and I'd watched them do it. And the same with my sister. She was applying for med school as well. Well, after studying a first degree, so I'd see her do it and see the stress that she was going through. And I think when I see all these people, and I remember thinking that it wasn't worth the stress or the pressure that they were under just to get into medical school. And then what happened was I decided to volunteer in a hospital. So I volunteered at UCH,
Okay.
University College Hospital, as a volunteer on the ward. So I had a group of friends that were doing it. And I thought this would be good career portfolio building for whatever I do in my life.
Sure.
It'd always be a good thing to say you've done, but also a good experience. And it really was, because I learned a lot from just being a volunteer, because all I did was go onto the wards and speak to people and listen to them talk and do shopping for them and buy things for them once a week. And that was my role. And I was on the infectious diseases ward. And so I had to put PPE on.
PPE before it was a big thing, as it has been during COVID times.
Big thing. Yeah, this was years ago. I was wearing a lot of PPE.
And what was the PPE like then? Was it the same as what we have now, or was it different?
It was the same, I'd say. The masks, I don't think we had the FFP3s as much back then. Okay. I think before COVID, a surgical mask was a big deal.
Yeah.
And just putting on a surgical mask felt like you're putting a large piece of PPE on your face.
Yeah.
Whereas now, it's not
it's
the case.
It's just the daily practice now.
Yeah. There were less visors available from then, back then, from what I can remember.
Yeah.
But overall, it was a good experience doing that volunteering. And then I slowly started to realize that being around patients was what I wanted to do in my career.
So that, would you say that the volunteering was quite a key factor in you making that decision? And you said you did some shopping for people. Was that, I'm guessing that was for the patients and And was that when they were in the hospital or after they get discharged? Or
No. Whilst they were inpatients on the ward, one of our roles as a volunteer, as volunteers, was to take their money and go to the shops, whether it's a Sainsbury's or a McDonald's,
right?
and
Okay.
buy them what they wanted, bring the food back to them and the change and the receipt.
Oh, right. Okay. So they're
And
instilling a
I
lot
did
of
a lot
trust
of that.
in you. They're putting a lot of
A
trust
lot
in
of
you,
that.
aren't they?
But
You-
I met a lot of. I remember this one guy who had mesothelioma.
yeah.
So that's incurable type of respiratory cancer.
Yeah.
Um, he just was a very calm, happy man, and told me that he's dying. Asked me to go to KFC for him, and so this vegetarian boy had never stepped a foot in a chicken shop, but never stepped a foot in KFC.
Yeah.
Went and bought him a chicken burger and chips. Bought it back for him, and then had a nice little chat with him.
Wow.
And it's just one of my good memories. And I did a lot of that. I remember getting one time I go to McDonald's for a 15-year-old with an eating disorder,
Mm.
and she was very specific about what type of burger she wanted, and I got it wrong.
Okay.
I had to go back to
Oh
McDonald's
no.
and ask
Oh,
them to remove the gherkin, and then went back to her, and so it was a good experience, but it was instrumental in me, like I said, deciding to pursue a career in medicine.
I've not actually come across those sorts of volunteers on the wards that I've worked on for sure. But it sounds like every ward should have people like you
What's it out?
doing people shopping and buying them food and stuff. That's amazing. So you did 3 years of biomed at UCL. Well, how was your
Yeah,
time at UCL overall?
that was incredible. So I was 3 years of a biomedical science degree, and then I spent another year as a master doing a
Mm.
master's, and the 4 years overall were just incredible. Um, I have made a lot of good friends, developed a lot of interests. I
Yeah.
felt successful, even though I didn't have a career. I still felt successful having completed the degree program, and
Mm.
I didn't struggle with the exams or the coursework, and that's not me gloating. I just put a lot of effort in.
Yeah.
I think the only thing I struggled with was trying to achieve the highest grade, which it was always going to be a tough task to get a first class honors, for example, at
Mm.
such a very good university.
Yeah.
Um, so I remember that being one of the biggest stresses. But I
Mm.
have to say, like, I had a great time in the period where I spent at UCL, and I have no regrets about any of the things I've done. Really, I wouldn't go back and change big parts of it. There's certain things that you'd always want to change about things you've done in the past or time you've spent.
Sure.
But honestly, don't have much regret.
That's good. And you glad you stuck around in London, being a London boy yourself?
Yeah, I don't want to go outside London.
You don't know there's nothing exists outside London, right?
There's not much out there.
There's nothing out there. Yeah. Okay. So obviously medical school is very hard to get into. There's no denying that.
Yeah.
You came from having already done a biomedical science degree and a master's. What challenges did you face trying to get into medical school?
Um, I found it very hard to get into medical school, actually, which I guess I just don't really talk about it a lot because it's like it's in the past. But
Mm.
the challenges getting into medical school, I have to honestly say that getting into medical school was the hardest. It's the hardest part about uh, the career so far that I've faced.
Okay.
I think the responsibility you do have to handle when you're a doctor, that's huge.
Yeah.
Um, so there is that, it's actually, but I think that the challenge of getting into medical school is one of the hardest challenges that I think I'm ever going to have to that I've faced so far in my career, and that I'm probably ever going to have to face. I
Mm.
think that it's very, very competitive to get into med school. There's a lot of hurdles. Um, it's it, it's something that it took me a while to do, and there were multiple reasons for that. I seemed to excel at university compared to my schooling years. And so because there's so much competition to get into medical school, they have very high expected grades to get into medical school. And that was one obstacle for me because I didn't meet some of the requirements. And so I just had to keep working at it until I managed to find a way in. I would say that the aptitude tests were difficult. I managed to do really well in the end, but I'm wired in a very different way from, I don't know, I wouldn't say the average person, but for example, I am very, very good at specific tests such as abstract reasoning and translating codes and things like that. I used to get 850 out of 900 on an abstract reasoning once in the UK CAT.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
I'm impressed.
That's impressive.
Yeah. But then I would do not so good in the other sections.
Okay.
But it always vary every year.
Yeah.
And it was, and so, my average grade wasn't particularly great every year, but it kept going up every time I applied for med school and every time I did that test. So I found it a challenge, but I think the most important thing, and it was a challenge because of my school grades, because of these aptitude test scores, because of my interview performance. There's lots of different hurdles you have to jump through, and that's why I say it's a big challenge just to get into medical school. I got better at each individual hurdle, got my way in, got into medical school. But I think the most important thing that I could say about getting into med school for me was that I was very, very committed and determined to get into med school. So much so that I did apply to study in Europe.
Okay.
There are agencies that you can apply for.
Yeah.
You pay a certain fee, and you get in like that, basically.
Oh, right. I didn't know
Because a lot of these international schools, medical schools, will take people with lower. I mean, they'll take people, and they would have a much lower expectation of their school grades and exam results and portfolios than other medical schools in the UK, for example. And sometimes I feel like if you just offer the money, then you'll get to where you want to be, which I think there's some truth in that.
Yeah.
There really is truth in that when it comes to spaces in medical school around the world. Sometimes if you know people and if you have money, you'll get there.
The power.
And that's not the case in England. But yeah, money is power. And luckily I didn't have to experience those that I didn't have to get in by knowing somebody or get in by paying an extortionate amount. I managed to get in through perseverance, but I think the commitment I had was what got me through, really. And I think that's, for a lot of people, is what they need to get into med school these days.
No, definitely. And your journey to get there sounds difficult, but equally incredible. Do you think that the fact that you took a bit more of a convoluted route into medical school compared to people who, for example, who have come straight from school at the age of 18, do you think that it made it all the more sweeter when you actually finally got in and, you really cherished that time and that degree much more?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I can't compare myself. I mean, because I can remember the feeling of getting the offer. I'd struggled to get offers, and then, like I said, I got so much better at the whole process that I'd got multiple offers in the year that I'd started med school, and I just had so much confidence about starting medical school and about getting into medical school at that point. I remember just feeling really elated having that offer for Barts, because it also meant I could stay in London. But I don't know I don't know how I would have felt if I was a lot younger and then gotten the offer, because it was sweet for me because of how much time and effort I put into trying to get in.
Yeah, for sure.
And I guess because I spent quite a few years doing that, so that's why it was quite sweet. I'm sure that there's a lot of people actually who start dreaming of getting in from when they're maybe 14, 15, something like that, and then they'd experience a lot of bliss when they got the offer. So I guess I can relate it to that. And then some people, I guess it's not always about time. Like some people could just decide that they want to do this,
Yeah.
and then they'd get an offer and still be as excited as I was, to be
Sure.
honest.
Sure.
But all I could say is that I just remember how happy I felt.
Yeah, no, for sure. And that's amazing. And so obviously we talked about how you grew up in Camden and then you moved over to, well, Euston Square, around that area for UCL, and then
Mm.
you traveled across to Whitechapel for medicine. Now, London has a lot of unique areas, I'm sure you'll agree. How was it transitioning from north to central to east?
Uh, I have to say, my heart truly is in central and North London, not in East London.
Oh, boo.
because because it feels like home. Because I grew up, I basically studied where I grew up,
Yeah.
and because Euston is bordering Camden, and then I had those good memories, and so there's a lot of positivity I associate with Central and North London,
Yeah.
and I don't think I have to really explain or elaborate much about how stressful medical school can be.
No,
And
definitely not.
so I went from Central to East, and as soon as I started being in East London, there was a, requirements to work hard, to work very, very hard. Sorry, I should say that. I mean, I think as soon as I started at East London, had to um, I had to adapt to a different degree style, a different learning style, because I think medical school is very different to GCSEs, A levels, and other degrees I've done, because there's an absolute mountain of knowledge to learn.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's very stressful. There's continuous exams to to sit and go through and pass. There's a lot of hurdles to jump. There's a lot of expectation on your shoulders. You have to act in a professional manner from day one, particularly at Barts Med School, because we had OSCEs from first year
We
that
did.
we
Yeah.
had to pass.
Yeah.
Um, I I think that at that point in my life, I was still very devoted and committed towards doing really well. Um, but it was starting to it was hard to be more at peace with how hard I had to work. For me, I found it more difficult,
Mm.
and I think that's because it was relentless at medical school compared to what I've had to do before.
Mm.
And so my time in Whitechapel in East London, to me, the memories just are all about working hard and not having time for myself as much, and not feeling as free, and um, not feeling like I have achieved something, because I think once you're in, like I said, there's years of continuous exams you have to go through. You don't get to a point where you feel like you've done it. I think that point
Mm.
is at the end of medical school.
We had exams.
So,
Well, we had tests every 9 weeks as well, didn't we?
yeah, so
Exams.
obviously we had to wait
Yeah.
5, 6 years until we can feel like we have done it. And so it was a very different experience than the however many years I had before that.
Mm.
Whitechapel itself, I mean, Barts Medical School is a great medical school, though. I have to say, like, the structure of the degree course was great.
Yeah.
The resources we had were great. The teachers were great. The lecture theatres were great. The library was great. Everything was great. I
The
don't think the
library's in
food
the
was that
church.
good.
The library in the church.
The church was good. The church was great. It was a
Yeah.
good church.
Good
We
church.
used
Yeah.
to pray every day.
Yeah, we did.
I wasn't as keen on the food, but I mean, my focus was just on working hard continuously and keeping
Yeah.
my head in a book. And then, yeah,
No,
that's that.
amazing. And I mean, I was going to ask you what your main challenges were through medical school, but I mean, you pretty much already answered that.
Someday.
Do you think that it's as tough as people make it out to be?
I do believe that it's as tough as you let it, as it's hard as you let it be for yourself. Or how do I word that? But it's all about what you want to get out of it and how much effort you put into it. I think that um, you can put less than the average amount of effort in and still pass the exams,
Hmm.
but you run a risk of failing.
Yeah.
And what I think of medical school compared to other degrees, and I believe this, is that they are a lot more strict and harsh on failures, and they have a lower threshold to expel people from the medical school.
Hmm.
And I've seen it myself.
Yeah.
They can give you, they can give you another opportunity. They can let you retake, but medical schools will kick you out if you fail finals.
Yeah. No, they're
No, but you can
brutal.
get a distinction in every single year.
Yeah.
As in, you can come and you can get a distinction or a merit in every single year, every single exam for 5 years. You fail the finals twice, you're out, no medical degree.
Yeah. No,
Um, and that I think is sad and disappointing.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
But you made it through every year, and now which is great, which is amazing, and it's impressive in itself to anyone who makes it through every year of medical school because it is
I
hard.
agree.
And getting to that final stage is extremely sweet, and then you have that transition. So you go from being a medical student to actually being working as a junior doctor, actually having some responsibility for patients and their health and their lives. It's scary, especially at the start. And I think F1s and F2s who are listening to this, for you personally, Priyesh, what did you like and dislike most about being a junior doctor? What were your highlights and low moments throughout?
Um, I like the new opportunities that you could get involved with. And when I say opportunities, I mean job opportunities. So because of the foundation year program, you can do 6 different jobs in 2 years. There's a lot of variety in there. I really like that, and I liked that we're finally given the opportunity to do what we've been prepping for however many years. I really that I appreciated. I think that what F1 doctors and medical students really need to be aware of, and even senior doctors, is that the career involves constant learning,
Mm.
um, and we always need to remember that especially when we're at the beginning of our careers. It's very easy to feel like we are useless, have a poor knowledge, are inexperienced, and not trustworthy. All of those things when you're a junior doctor, a first year F1 doctor, or even an SHO,
Mm.
depending on the specialty you work in. Like, for example, in pediatrics,
Yeah.
there's much more reliance upon the senior doctors than the junior doctors when you compare it to other specialities, like
Sure.
in emergency medicine.
Yeah.
Um, but my advice what the challenge, I think that I had the same challenge that everyone had in an F1 year was that it was a big step up from having no responsibility,
Yeah.
no pressure,
Yeah.
or for no responsibility for patient care,
Yeah.
no pressure from senior professionals around you, to having a lot of that. Um, and I think part of the problem is you work in such a stressed environment that you're going to be expected to do things that make you very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Even though we're taught to always sort of speak out when we're uncomfortable, I think
Yeah.
we end up in situations where we just have to get on with it.
Yeah.
But my advice is to just always remember that it is a constant learning process.
Yeah.
There's constant learning in this career compared to other careers. I think it's almost endless things that you'd have to learn and train for.
Yeah. No, I think that's good advice. And you know, when you make it through med school, you know a lot, but then when you actually start as an F1, you realize that in terms of the job itself, you actually know nothing, and
Mm.
therefore you have to ask for advice from your seniors. from your SHOs, registrars, and especially at the beginning, to any F1s who are listening or anyone new to working as a doctor, people know that you're new, so don't be afraid to ask. No question is a bad question, especially at the start. So that's definitely some useful tips there.
And there's no stupid questions.
No, not at all.
No stupid questions.
Not at all. No stupid questions at all. Right, so we're going to take a quick break from this medicine chat because it can get a bit, overwhelming. We're going to play a short game, Priyesh, if that's okay. It's called.
Yeah. I'm excited about this game.
Yeah, right. Well, it's called Doc Against the Clock. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I want you to fire out the answer that first comes to your mind, and then I want you to give a little explanation as to why you've chosen that answer. So let's just lighten things up a bit. Move away from medicine, have a bit of fun, and then we'll get back to talking more about some of the amazing stuff that you've been doing over the last few years. Okay, are you ready? You sure? You nervous? Ready? Done your stretching? Yeah. All right. So, right. Question 1. What do you prefer, tea or coffee?
Tea.
Why?
Undebatable. It's tea. We're in England. We're a tea drinking country. Put the kettle on, love.
Have you not seen how many coffee shops there are these days?
Coffee shops sell tea as well.
That's true, but they're called coffee shops. They're not called tea shops. Okay. Cricket or football?
Football.
Why?
Football. I love sports that involve a lot of athletics, mobility, and movement, all of that, and that look like people are working very hard. So I don't want to disrespect cricketers, but Trevor Noah said, if you can be fat and good at a sport, it's not a sport. That's what Trevor Noah said. But I do love cricket, but I love the high intensity sports. Yeah. Because I really want to play them as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And Priyesh is a top footballer. I've played with him myself, and he definitely doesn't run backwards. Anyway.
I had a few trials at Arsenal.
Oh, right. United? Yeah, I'm sure. I think it was Tottenham, wasn't it? I think it was Tottenham.
It was Tottenham.
Speaking of,
I don't remember. So many.
Yeah, so many. Yeah, he's gone through the list. Speaking of Tottenham, what's worse, Tottenham winning the league or Arsenal getting relegated?
I'm not as much a football fan these days. As in, I'm a mutual.
Oh, right. Well, you were an Arsenal fan.
It's a much better life. I was an Arsenal fan. It's a much better life not supporting a team. Trust me. You know how stressful it can be to be a football fan, particularly an Arsenal fan.
Well, you've chosen a bad time to stop supporting Arsenal, given how well they're doing at the moment.
But life is better not supporting a team because you can watch everything and you can see the skill and the talent and watch all the commentary, and you won't be upset because nobody's back-chatting your team and you don't see your team lose because you don't have a team. You're just a mutual. It's like watching the World Cup all the time.
Yeah, but when your team wins, it's the best feeling. So
Yeah, I do that. But Arsenal,
you don't get that with Arsenal, so it's okay. I understand why you've gone mutual. So, in a boxing match, who are you supporting? Anthony Joshua or Tyson Fury?
Who do you think?
Well, I don't know. After last weekend's fight, you might have gone the other way and started supporting Tyson Fury, given that you look quite similar to him as well.
Who I'd support is not the same as who I think would win.
Right. Okay. So who do you think would win?
Would always be in a fight with AJ and Tyson Fury. It's a real difficult one. I think there wouldn't be a knock. I don't know. I think Fury would win on points. But who I would support would be AJ. I'd hope AJ would win. He's I don't know how else to describe it. I just love the way that he really puts a lot of work into his body.
Yeah.
Which I don't see from all the other boxers. Is where it's not just about hitting someone; it's also about the strength he has, the stability he has, all of these things. I just find it different to other boxers. For example, like the power he has, he will focus on he'll focus on the ability to lift things as much as he would be the ability to punch things. So it's more that I think he's just in his head is trying to be a strong person, a strong human being, and not just the best boxer, if that makes sense.
He
And
he
I can
lost a
see
bit
in
of
his
that, didn't he?
personality as well.
He lost a bit of
Eh?
that strength when he had
He
that
lost a bit of,
outburst.
he lost a bit.
Yeah, he did.
Damn, man.
Okay, cars. Let's move on to cars. If you could drive one, Ferrari or Lamborghini,
Lamborghini Urus.
why?
It's beautiful. It's the best looking SUV,
Okay.
and it's yeah.
Okay, we're learning a lot about you. He's a Lamborghini man. All right, next question. A 10K hike up a mountain or a day at the spa?
10K hike.
You're an active man.
Go
You
to
don't like
active.
relaxing.
Yeah.
You don't like relaxing. You don't like a jacuzzi.
No, I love jacuzzi. I love spas. I want a facial, man. I neglect this, honestly. But I love being active.
Yeah, that's good. What's your favorite cuisine?
Pizza.
Oh,
Mexican is good. Mexican is good though.
you have to
Pizza.
choose pizza.
Italian.
Italian. Yeah. Okay, last question. Barts or UCL?
Oh,
Oh, I knew this one would get you. You have to choose. You know, it's a quick fire round. You can't be dwelling on these questions.
can I just have another 10 minutes and I'll go? I need to go to the toilet, mate. I need. It's that time. Nature calls. So I gotta go.
We need the answer now. Be careful what you say. We've got listeners from both, I'm sure.
It's
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it at the end. I'll ask you again at the end.
Yeah, we'll definitely come back. I'll definitely answer you.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Fine. Right. Well done, Priyesh. Thank you for answering those questions. Excellent answers. We've learned. Yep. Give yourself a pat on the back as you are doing. Yeah, that's great. We've learned a lot about you.
Hey guys, sorry to pause the episode. I just wanted to take a quick moment to tell you all about the sponsors of this episode, and they are BetterHelp. That's HELP. Now, for anyone who's feeling particularly stressed, whether you're a medical student, junior doctor, or even you're not in the medical space and you think things are getting a bit too much for you, well, BetterHelp offers licensed therapists who are trained to listen and to talk to you. You can talk to a therapist in a completely private and online environment at your own convenience. There's a broad range of expert therapists, over 20,000 therapists in the BetterHelp network, and it gives you access to the help that you need at just the press of a button, online, in a private space at any time that you need it. Now, all you have to do is fill out a questionnaire that will assess your specific needs, and after you've filled out this questionnaire, then BetterHelp will get back to you with a trained therapist within 48 hours. You can schedule your phone conversations, your video calls, and you even have unlimited text messaging, so you're in direct contact with your therapist at any time. Now, many people who know me don't know this, but I've actually been having BetterHelp therapy myself for a number of reasons, and I can't tell you how much it's helped me to think about things in a different way, to try and address my anxiety, my fears, and try and balance my emotions. So I can't recommend this service enough, and it's great because you're in text messaging contact with your therapist, and you can schedule meetings just easily on the app at just the press of a button, and it's very, very user friendly as well. And if you don't feel that your therapist is understanding you, or you just don't feel that you click and you get on, well, no issue. You can request for a new therapist at any time without any charge. So go on, guys, join me and the 2 million plus people who have taken charge of their mental health by joining BetterHelp. And to top it off, there is a special offer to all of you MedTalks listeners. If you enter the code betterhelp.com/medtalks, that's HELP.com/medtalks, then you will get 10% off your first month's subscription. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this episode.
Okay. Now, FGM, female genital mutilation. When I say those three words, what comes to your mind straight away?
Two things. Poor awareness and human rights abuse. I think, yeah, I can talk more about it. but definitely those two things.
And just please do talk
Yeah.
more about. Tell us how exactly you found this particular interest, and I think firstly just explain to the audience what actually FGM is, because a lot of people, as you said, there's poor awareness of it,
Mm,
and we don't really get taught much about it.
mm.
What actually is it, and how did you end up with this interest in it?
Okay, so FGM is a practice with no clinical indication that involves damage to the female genitalia, in particular, in
Yeah.
particular the clitoris, clitoral hood, and the labia minora. Um,
Yeah.
that constitutes the majority of the FGM procedures that are done in the world. It's a very brutal practice that involves um, either removing part of the female genitalia or damaging it. It's a practice that has many historic origins, and it's not just cultural reasons that it's done; it's health and hygiene reasons as well, and even economic reasons. It's something that has been forced upon young girls from as young as 1 week of age up to their adult life across the world. It's something that, unfortunately, it's estimated that 200 million girls have suffered from in the world right
Wow.
now who are alive are suffering from. And it's something that is ongoing, and that is difficult to envisage ending. I think for me, I've always been passionate about these topics that don't get much attention, but that warrant attention. And that's why I say there's poor awareness, because I truly believe that if people are unaware that young girls are mutilated, then we are letting down those young girls. And
Sure.
I think in particular, health professionals need to be aware of this, because they are in contact with these girls and women, and more often than not, let it slide by, ignore it, don't approach the topic, and therefore the assistance that these young girls and women really need and deserve is not given to them.
Yep.
Um, I ended up getting involved in it. This is a really good story.
Okay. Let's hear it.
It's really good. I'm always going to tell people this story whenever they ask me about FGM from now on. You just made me remember this. The reason why I've done as much the reason why I've stayed involved in FGM teaching, research, and training is because many years ago in medical school, halfway through medical school, I failed a reflection on a topic that was nothing to do with FGM. I
Okay.
have never failed anything in
Yeah.
all the years I've studied for. I mean, I may have done really badly on one of the first ever exams I did when I was 18 at university, but I remember being upset at failing this reflection, because A, I did put a lot of work into it. I thought it was a good reflection, to be honest. And B, who fails a reflection? How do you fail a reflection? Like, come on.
I was going to say that.
How do you fail reflecting? How?
How can you fail something that's subjective?
Yeah, I know.
They clearly didn't agree with anything that you reflected on.
No. They thought poor
Okay,
reflection,
fine.
mate. You're not thinking right.
Yeah. All right. So you failed the
reflection. Part of it was a reflection, actually, which I was more upset about. The other part of it was an essay, which I did. The essay was about steroid use in gym goers, and I can understand why they failed me for it, because in medical career and science degrees and medicine, you have to sort of reference things properly, and there's not much literature out there, published literature on steroid abuse in people who you go to the gym. So I get that. I don't understand why I failed a reflection, but the remediation for that was to write an essay of my choice. And I just wanted to do something different. And I saw FGM somewhere in the Royal Society of Medicine, like an essay competition. And actually, it was a competition for, I think it was an essay competition for FGM. So I thought if I do this essay competition, I could also reword it. I could also submit something for my remediation and then reword it and submit it for this competition. And then as I was doing this essay, I learned a lot about it and thought, wow, this is terrible. I obviously knew about FGM because I'd studied global health in the past. I knew what it was. Otherwise, I wouldn't have chosen the topic. So I had an idea about it. But I think the issue is the more and more. So I had this strong interest and passion in these health injustices, but the more and more time I spent learning, I'm going to keep this on.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. The more time.
Yeah. Perfect.
Reading about this topic, the more it just stuck with me, and the more I thought I could be involved with a lot more research and a lot more projects than just this remediation. So I just did that remediation essay, and from then on, I've been involved in a lot, and still am involved in a lot of things to do with FGM. So all the successes I've had, and I've had a lot of success with FGM, is that one of the biggest categories in my CV and portfolio is about the work I've done with FGM. Like I've taught at medical school. I was a lecturer.
Yeah.
The entire degree program for the Obs and Gynae module. I taught the whole year group. I've taught at public health events and public health departments. I've taught at CCG events. I've given talks on the safeguarding events as well. I've got like 200-300 feedback forms. That was a big thing that you needed to get when you're at medical school. They always talk about, you need to get feedback forms, to prove your teaching. And then I did 2 different projects on FGM audits. I've presented at 6 different conferences, 2 of them international, best audit at one of them as well. And then I've still got more ideas ongoing, and all of this just because I failed a reflection.
That's amazing. So, failure is not always a bad thing.
Failure is a great thing. I'm so happy I failed. I was so angry when I failed.
If anybody else is listening and they failed any reflections, well, there you go. Sometimes it can work out in a good way.
I just remember being so angry at failing that reflection.
Yeah.
I wrote a long reply to the medical school, a long email to the medical school about why I felt it was unjust. And I've never done that before.
There you go. Every cloud has a silver lining. That saying applies so well to this. But why do you think that you were so invested in FGM? Because I understand that there's a lack of awareness, but you could say that there's a lack of awareness about a lot of things within healthcare around the world. Why do you think that specifically FGM stuck to you so deeply?
I think that to me, it felt very neglected. That's one reason. And then obviously that I thought that people would be interested in it if they knew about it. So that's another thing. But as time has gone by, I think that the idea of the practice itself, what it involves, the torturous methods that are used, and the fact that it's performed on babies, their 2-week-old baby will have her clitoris ripped out of her, or majority of it ripped out of her, or her vagina sewn up together. I think that the idea of that is so much more shocking than a lot of the things that I know of that are injustices. There are lots of terrible things that happen in the world, but I do believe that this is an atrocious one. And so it's those 3 factors that how shocking I think it is, the lack of awareness and the fact that people would want to know about it. I just thought that the best thing for me to focus my energy on was that. And I don't regret that decision.
No, I mean, it's amazing work. And, the fact that you've given so many lectures on it, done, audits, and and are clearly trying to raise the awareness of it. Why do you think there is such poor awareness with regards to FGM? And as a society, how do you think we can address that?
So it's poor awareness because it's an underground topic. People who have had FGM do not want to talk about it. There's lots of reasons for that. Honestly, some girls do not know that they've had FGM because it was done on them when they were 1 month of age. And in some communities, you don't talk about your genitals, you don't talk about sex, you don't talk about relationships until you're 18 or you get married. Men have a poor understanding of it. And to be honest, it's not all men, it's not driven by men, it's women as well that encourage the practice in these communities. Because it's illegal, a lot of people are trying to keep it undercover because they don't want to themselves get into trouble, get their parents get into trouble. You can face up to 14 years in prison if you are found to assist in an FGM procedure, even if you book flight tickets for your niece to go to Somalia and she has FGM, you could land yourself in prison. It's the funny thing is that just never happens, that people are not prosecuted. But that's one reason why it's not really talked about and why it's underground. And then obviously people tend to prioritize things that are a lot more obvious. And so, the funding for diabetes, for example, is necessary, but it's always going to be a lot more than funding for this human rights abuse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're obviously doing a lot to try and raise the awareness, but how can other people contribute to those? How can they make similar efforts that you're doing?
I think that the problem the problem is that people are too distracted by things that aren't too distracted by things that they think are attractive. So, and that's the problem you have with FGM, because it just doesn't sound like something you want to sit down and spend an hour learning about. Whereas Love Island, it's a lot more drama to that.
Yeah.
It's a lot more drama to that. Everyone's talking about it. They look pretty, or uh, that gains a lot more attention. So I think that the pandemic has really helped people be more aware of issues in general. The Afghanistan war, the recent issues in Afghanistan got a lot more attention than what I would have expected it to. The domination of the Taliban, the Russia war has definitely got so much more news coverage than what I would have expected it to. I think that the news media can be very political as well. But the point I'm trying to make is that people are definitely, since the pandemic, becoming a lot more aware of these injustices and issues. And another big thing was the Black Lives Matter movement. So I think it started with that and COVID, yeah? And so I think that people are slowly becoming more interested in these human rights issues and abuses and atrocities and inequalities. But because they weren't as interested in general, that's why FGM was neglected, and it's still why it's not getting the attention it gets. So if people are going to do something now for FGM, I just believe that people need to just learn about it. I mean, there's not much you're going to be able to do in terms of changing a girl's life who's 18 and who has had FGM. You're not going to be able to do much for it. You could always donate to the small local organizations that work in women's health and empowerment. There's a lot of them around all over the country, and I can give you a list of them. But I think having awareness is the main thing people need to do, need to try to do on the topic of FGM.
Can it be reversed?
So type 3 FGM, which is where the labia are sutured together, that can be essentially undone, okay? But you may have some scar tissue left over. You basically, it's a very simple procedure where you use a blade and you cut that tissue that has formed together, therefore opening up the whole of the opening up the labia. So that can be undone, but not. So that's that type 1 and type 2, which involve partial or total removal of the clitoris, with or without excision of the labia. That's more difficult to get undone, because clitoral surgery there's not much evidence base behind it. There are some surgeons who may perform it, but the success rates are always going to be difficult. The complications of FGM you could always try and manage, such as the cysts you can get, the urine infections you can get. You can always manage those things. But reversal is only possible in some situations, but not all. And I think that contributes towards the long-term mental health problems and medical problems that these girls and women suffer for, because it's not just a one-off procedure and side effect that these women and girls suffer from. There's a long list, whether it's urological issues, menstrual problems, and whether it's the mental health problems. There's a long list of issues that these girls and women suffer from.
So it's one event that has consequences for potentially the rest of their lives. And for any healthcare professionals listening, if they come across a female who they suspect to have had FGM done, I'm talking specifically in the UK at the moment, but what would they need to do? What should they do?
So this is the other interesting thing about FGM when you compare it to other medical issues. FGM compared to, I don't know, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, compared to medical pathologies, FGM requires you legally to do something given the particular situation. So you have a legal obligation to report to the police any girl under the age of 18 who has had FGM. And I'm trying to think of other, things that you could find in girls under the age of 18 that you would legally have to report to the police, not just your safeguarding lead, not just your seniors, to the police within a short period of time. There's not much I can think of. And the other problem that healthcare professionals the other thing that healthcare professionals have to be aware of, but are not aware of, based on the research I've done and what I've seen on PubMed, is that they have to be aware of this legal obligation and have to act. And so, obviously, it depends. You asked me what to do if you come across a girl with FGM. It really depends on what the situation is. If it's a girl under the age of 18 who's had FGM, police is your mandatory obligation. And if you do not do that, you will be referred to the General Medical Council and investigated thereafter in whatever means, maybe it's the police or the GMC, I'm not sure. If there's a person over the age of 18 who's had FGM, it really depends. If they don't want anybody knowing about it, you don't have to tell anybody about it. But the other issue is that regardless of age, everyone with FGM has to be reported to NHS England. Absolutely everybody.
Right, okay.
And again, I can't think of something else that there is a mandatory duty to report across all age ranges, regardless of sickness and health. I can't really think of much else. So these obligations and requirements are very unique And it's a shame that the awareness of this among healthcare professionals, isn't as good as it should be.
And so again, it comes down to confidentiality as well, doesn't it? Breaching confidentiality. So, from what you're saying, somebody's under the age of 18, you notice that they have FGM. It's a mandatory requirement to let the police know.
Yeah.
So, no, there's no case of do you ask the person, can I let the police know? You just go ahead and do it. You break that confidentiality, and we know that when we learn about ethics and confidentiality, we know that there are certain scenarios where we actually can breach confidentiality. So in this case, you just go ahead and tell the police.
Just go ahead and tell. I mean, and the other thing you do is you actually inform the parents that this is what you have to do. The problem, yeah, but the problem is, obviously, there's a lot you have to take into account, that you're trying to not discriminate against people. You're trying to not scare these parents and these girls, because sometimes they could be refugees and asylum seekers. They're probably thinking, okay, am I going to be deported? My parents are going to be deported. My parents are going to go to prison. All this. You've got to find a balance between being culturally sensitive and having zero tolerance. And again, this is something that I think all health professionals should have some training on, because expecting them to do it for the first time is not going to be easy. And I think that training should be mandatory, which was sort of part of the reason why I was so committed to do a lot of the FGM teaching, because I knew it was mandatory. I mean, it just appeared ridiculous. When I was teaching that FGM lecture, if I didn't do it at Barts Medical School, no one else would have. So maybe Dr. Rashna Chenoy would have, but there wasn't a dedicated person, from what I can remember, teaching that talk. There wasn't an allocated lecture, and these things I've just explained to you, I think, are very important to be aware of.
Yeah, I mean, exactly, because any of us could come across this, and if without teaching from yourself, we wouldn't know what to do. But now that you have taught us, and for listeners who have heard this, now they'll actually know what to do and how to act. So you're right, it is really important, especially when and it's mandatory to inform the police and NHS England. It's all incredibly fascinating stuff, Priyesh, and it kind of brings us nicely on to talk about your humanitarian aid work.
Let's hear an hour about that as well.
Yeah. Well, I know you've been doing that more recently. Just tell us a bit more about that and how you got involved. What made you get involved?
I think I've got a problem where I just can't really stick to one thing. Isn't it?
Well, it's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It just tires you out. But I basically, it's kind of like, how I was talking earlier about not knowing what career I wanted to do when I was a lot younger. I'm kind of in the same situation now, where I don't know what to specialize in. And I've talked to you already about pediatrics. I will consider it, but I have really felt a bit directionless at times. But one thing I knew that I wanted to do was international work. That's from the beginning of med school, and I didn't want to do permanent fixed long-term jobs abroad, but I wanted to do some development work. And so I'm in this limbo where I'm not sure what to specialize in, but at the same time, so I'm in that limbo. But because I'm in this situation, I have the ability to venture off into strange parts of the world, foreign parts of the world for me, and work on these little projects, which I did. What was your question? Because I feel like I've just rambled on a bit.
What was well, I mean, tell us how you actually got involved with it, and you can tell us a bit more about your most recent project in Greece.
Oh yeah, that's what you asked. Yeah, Google. I was
Google's a great
Googling,
thing.
yeah, I was Googling a bunch of terms to do some medical volunteer work abroad. And then whilst I was doing that at work, there was a doctor in the department who'd actually worked with this organization I worked with. So I talked to her a bit.
All right.
And I think just bravery was the key thing. Like I just decided to just sign up to something without thinking too much about it because I thought it would be a good opportunity. So
Yeah.
it was finding something through the internet, um, and just being brave and trying something new. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and so how you obviously you went to Greece.
Mm.
How was it? Tell us a bit more about your experience.
Yeah. Sorry, you did ask about that. So I went to.
It's all right.
I spent about 6 weeks as a volunteer doctor in Athens, and we were we were seeing refugees and asylum seekers in our clinic. We were providing basic primary care and also advice to these people. And then we did a lot of we had clinics also outside of refugee camps, so we'd provide some care to people living in refugee camps, and we'd do some street outreach work with people who were addicted to drugs or alcohol, or neither, but living on the streets in the middle of Athens, and that included sex workers, and we did a lot of wound care for them. I think the reason that what's important to note is that in Greece has a big refugee asylum seeker problem. I don't want to say it's a problem, but they've got a they would in Greece they would describe it as a crisis, in that there's a continuous flow of refugees and asylum seekers coming from Syria, West Africa, and Afghanistan directly into Greece because of the geographical routes that are available for those people. Because of the issues that happen in Syria, because of the issues in Syria and Afghanistan, and because of the instability in West Africa, a lot of people, 90% of people who, or people from abroad who end up in Europe come through Greece. And so that meant that there's always volunteer opportunities for healthcare professionals of a variety of backgrounds to work with small voluntary organizations, and see and treat. And so I did that for about 6 weeks. Sorry, and then and after that, I decided to be a medical coordinator, which was a step up. And again, that was just being brave and having a passion for change. Because as you can imagine, the voluntary sector, the sort of the small little organizations in Europe that work on refugees and asylum seekers are not very well funded. There's not much money that they have at their disposal to do the things they want to do. And because there's not much money, there's not much room for change. There's not, it's harder for them to find people to do a job. Those people won't be paid very well. And making change is making change is difficult regardless of where you work. I mean, changing the NHS is just sometimes unheard of,
Impossible.
right?
Yeah.
Like the printers won't be working for 10 years before they're replaced in some hospitals. And then even then,
So
they'll just
true.
replace it with a broken one, you know? So, I mean, so I decided to go and work or go and be there for another 2.5 months as a coordinator to implement changes and do more of the work. And that's what I did. And I got back a few months ago. Yeah.
Amazing. And what were the key things that really stuck out to you from that experience that you had out there?
I think there's obviously the situation with refugees and asylum seekers, and then there's working in that that line of work, that sort of career path of development work and non-governmental organizations. With working with those organizations, that's always I learned a lot because it was my first job with them. teamwork is essential, respect and humility is important, and to be honest, caring or being considerate for your colleagues is very important. So I think I learned a lot about that. But then with regards to the refugee asylum seeker situation, I think it was just very eye-opening. I remember one time I saw three African women with their babies that, they were either 2 years old or 5 years old. Some of them were on a pushchair, some of them were walking, just rummaging through trash cans at midnight in the center of Athens. Like,
It's shocking.
you
That's just
you
shocking,
don't
isn't
see
it?
that in London. Like, I think there's a lot of homeless people in
No,
London, but you don't see three women with their babies and young children rummaging through trash cans to look for clothes
that's
and
heartbreaking.
food as well, not just clothes, but food. And I'm like, okay, it's not that they were dying or in a really bad state of health, but their general life was just not great, or there wasn't much available that they had to do those things. And like I said, they're not starving, they're not dying from poverty, but they were just still in that sort of situation where they do that. So I think and then I met many people. They told me their stories about their journeys of torture, being stuck in prison, or they described the refugee camps as prisons because, if you walk in and your phone camera is smashed to bits and you're not allowed to leave and you're kept behind bars, I think it's not surprising that you would feel like it's a prison and not allowed to leave and not told when you're going to leave. I'm not surprised that they would term it as a prison. But I met a lot of people and then learned a lot about how things are like back where they were from. And those memories, I think, will stay with me.
Yeah, and that's amazing, and it must be very humbling and satisfying to know that you're making a difference to all these people's lives. Not just obviously you're doing your work in the UK as a doctor here, but you've actually made a difference to people outside of the UK and contributed to those societies as well. It must be very satisfying that you've done that.
I don't know, I just felt like just another sort of piece of work a project I was working on. But I guess it's the same when I see like you help someone in hospital here, you just give them a medicine or you make them feel really good. I had the same feeling when I was out there in Athens, but I think it was more that I just sort of with the same thing with the FGM issue. Like I recognize something that is worse, and then put my energy on that. But yeah, you're right. It was satisfying. I did feel that. Yeah.
How do you relax? How do you unwind from all of this stuff that you do? What's your go-to?
I tell myself that I relax by working out, and I do kind of believe that. Like, it doesn't, when I train, it doesn't look like it's relaxing. Like, I have very, very hard training sessions at my boxing club and on my track club. And I used to have hard sessions in the gym. It doesn't look like I'm relaxing, but I just feel like that is me in my zone, content.
The endorphins really hit.
Maybe. I look like I'm dying. Like, I don't feel like I'm getting endorphins to
They come after. The endorphins come after.
Yeah, do you know what?
I had,
Yeah, because after you work your body, I don't know, like your muscles just feel more mobile after the stiffness. They feel more mobile, and
yeah.
you feel that feeling athletic is a great feeling. Like, well, if you don't work out for a while, if you don't do athletic workouts and you don't work out, I just feel you might feel really stiff, but if you do a lot of athletic work, and you just feel great afterwards. So that's what I do. I don't like sit and I don't chill much. I don't go to spas and stuff. I just I do,
Oh yeah, you're not a spa person.
nah. I'm waiting for you to take me so that we can
Well, one day,
yeah, and yeah.
maybe as a treat for doing this.
But I'm just yeah. I just work
No,
out.
well, you're doing incredible, Priyesh.
Thank you.
Amazing work so far. What's next for you?
That's a secret.
To be continued, to be seen.
I can't really wink before. I'm not really good at it. But it's a
No,
secret.
I can't do it either. No, let's stop.
Okay. I have,
Right.
yeah, I think I'm just working on a few things. I don't know really, to be honest. I honestly I'm just trying to figure out what I want my career to involve. And
Yeah.
but yeah, got a few things. I'll let you know about them.
Good. We look forward to hearing all about it. Now, Dr. Priyesh, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure. I've loved talking to you, loved hearing all about your life story so far. You've done some really incredible work and you've inspired me, and I'm sure you've inspired a lot of our listeners. Hats off to you for everything you've done, and to keep going. I'll be following you and supporting you the whole way. For people who want to reach out to you, want to follow you, your Dr. Priyesh is active on social media. His Instagram handle is Doctor, so that's DOCTOR Priyesh, Priyesh. He has some very famous hash brown talks, which are him candidly talking about current world affairs. They're very interesting. I've definitely watched many of them before. But if you do want to reach out to him, Priyesh, how, apart from your Instagram, is there any other way people can reach out to you, whether it's about FGM or about your humanitarian aid work in Greece, or just if they want to speak to you about boxing, athletics, anything? What's the best way to get in touch with you?
That's one of the best ways is for DMing me on Instagram. Otherwise, I can give one of my email addresses if you think that would be good. I can put it in your bio, your link. But yeah, I'm definitely open to messages on Instagram or email. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So, guys, if you want to get in touch, yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to mention that I think I want to interview you one day. Because I think that your journey and your life is inspiring as well, and I want to learn all about it. To be honest, even to get to this stage of doing a podcast takes a lot. To put yourself out there and record yourself, get a microphone, get the setup, ask people to do a podcast, and then put it out there. It takes a lot. So I think one day we need to make sure that you're the center of the talk.
For sure. Let's do it. We'll do it one day, Priyesh. Thank you. Thanks very much. I really appreciate your time. And to all the listeners, I hope you enjoyed the episode. Please do leave us with some feedback. Let us know what you thought. If you want to message us on Instagram or email us at hellomedtalks@gmail.com, ask us any questions and just tell us how you found the episode. We've got more episodes like this coming up very soon, so do stay tuned for those. But once again, Priyesh, thank you so much for coming on. And all the best with your future endeavors. You've got a big, bright future ahead of you.
Thank you so much. Thanks for this. And
All right.
everyone had a good time listening.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.